From 1935 onwards, and in spite of the delays in the shipyards, Hitler was also wedded to the production of large warships and was a battleship man after Raeder's own heart. It was in 1939 that Raeder presented to Hitler the final crystallization of his ambition for the Navy in the form of the Z Plan, which envisaged a fleet in which the battleship remained king. This unrealistic blueprint required the Navy to possess 10 battleships, 4 aircraft carriers, 4 armoured ships, 5 heavy cruisers, 68 destroyers and 249 U-boats, with a completion date of 1948 at the latest. With such a navy, Raeder assured Hitler that England could be defeated, and possibly even America as well. Eleven days after the naval agreement, the first U-boat since 1918 was commissioned at Kiel. In September 1935, Hitler appointed Karl Dönitz as Führer der U-boat. Like many who had served in the submarine arm in the Great War, Dönitz remained convinced as to the military effectiveness of the underwater craft. There is little doubt that he supported the Nazis and willingly followed Hitler in a career that would take him not just to commander of the Navy, but to Hitler's chosen replacement as Führer of the German people in 1945. Dönitz emerged as a single-minded and vocal champion of the U-boat arm. He strove to hone his young fleet into a highly effective fighting force in the years before the war. Great War U-boat operations led him to identify 2 requirements that must underpin future submarine strategy. The first was tonnage warfare, i.e. sink 750,000 tons of British shipping every month for a year, then England must surrender. Secondly, employ submarine wolf packs against the convoys. Of the submarines in service in 1939, the Type II weighed in at just 250 tons. Although Dönitz intended them as training vessels, the early onset of the war saw them employed extensively in combat. Seen here are the many variants of the 626-ton Type 7 U-boat, which was the most numerous class of submarine built in the war, with over 600 of the C model completed, although obsolete by war's end. The final design was the Type 9, and at just over 1,000 tons, was more akin to the class of submarine operated by the British and American navies, and was built in 5 versions, and they were not liked by their crews, who called them sea cows. When in mid to late August 30 U-boats were dispatched to the Atlantic and North Sea, neither Raeder nor Dönitz saw their deployment as preparations for a new conflict. Reassured by Hitler, neither believed England would go to war in 1939. The opening salvos of the German attack on Poland were fired by guns of the oldest major warship serving with any of the navies of the great powers. As one of 3 large warships permitted Germany by the Versailles Treaty, the Schleswig-Holstein had been extensively rebuilt, even though she was constructed before 1906. As the mobile forces of the Wehrmacht tore into Poland under an air umbrella provided by the new Luftwaffe, the political consequences of Hitler's decision to invade his eastern neighbour followed, with Great Britain's declaration of war on Germany on the 3rd of September. A shocked Admiral Raeder believed that war would not come until 1944, by which time he would have possessed far more ships. Also, a stunned Dönitz announced that "We have today a weapon and a leadership that can face up to this enemy. The war will last a long time, but if each does his duty, we shall win." When the radio message flashed out the news of the outbreak of hostilities, Dönitz had 18 Type 7 and Type 9 U-boats on station in the Atlantic. These were deployed from the northwest coast of Ireland through to the Azores. All carried the internationally agreed prize rules governing the sinking of ships. The actions of the captain of U-30 suggested, however, that Germany was prepared to flout them even from the outset of this new war. Commanding a Type 7 U-boat was Lieutenant Fritz Lemp, who was patrolling an area some 250 miles northwest of Ireland when, on the evening of the 3rd, he spotted a large vessel on a zigzag course heading westward off the normal shipping lanes. Lemp explained his actions by claiming that the vessel was an armed merchantman. He launched 2 torpedoes at the ship at 2100 hours, both of which hit. His victim was, in fact, a liner, the Athenia, outbound from Liverpool and carrying 1,100 passengers, of whom 112 were lost, 28 being American. The British claimed that this sinking showed that Germany had determined from the outset to engage in unrestricted U-boat warfare. The opportunist sinking of the aircraft carrier HMS Courageous in the western approaches on September the 17th, with 518 of her crew by U-29, was embraced by Goebbels' propaganda department with altogether more enthusiasm than Lemp's action. Dönitz described the dispatch of one of the Royal Navy's prize vessels as a glorious success and saw it as confirming evidence that British U-boat countermeasures were not as effective as believed. Much was made of the submarine's captain as Otto Schuhart emerged as the first of many U-boat commanders to be lauded by the German press as a grey wolf. Schuhart had been in the Navy for just 10 years and had taken command of the U-29, a Type 7 submarine, just before the onset of hostilities. The U-boat would sink a further 16 ships in addition to the Glorious, with Schuhart being awarded the Knight's Cross on the 16th of May 1940. This victory provided the U-boat arm with a tremendous fillip, and the high morale of the officers and men was clear for all to see when Hitler visited a U-boat headquarters at Wilhelmshaven on September the 28th. Dönitz was keen for Hitler to personally meet and speak with his young charges. The evident enthusiasm and appreciation of the Führer for the performance of the submariners was Dönitz's chance to present his argument to Hitler that, with 300 boats, he believed the U-boat arm could achieve decisive success over England. As the site of the internment and subsequent scuttling of the mass of the German High Seas Fleet in 1919 following the end of the Great War, Scapa Flow exercised a powerful hold on the minds of the Kriegsmarine. Dönitz had for some time been contemplating an attack on the base which, as in 1914-18, was being employed by the Royal Navy as a major fleet anchorage. In casting around for an able submarine commander in which to entrust the mission, he settled on Kapitän-Leutnant Günther Prien. Dönitz believed he possessed all the professional qualities and abilities required. U-47 slipped out of Wilhelmshaven on the 8th of October. Entering the difficult channel into Scapa Flow undetected on the evening of the 13th, Prien fired 2 separate salvos of torpedoes at HMS Royal Oak. Displacing some 33,000 tons, the battleship had been commissioned in 1916 and, although had been modernized in the 20s, was unable to withstand such an attack, and the ship sank, taking with her 330 crewmen. Prien and his crew returned to a rapturous reception. Hitler was said to be beside himself with joy at the news and immediately promoted Dönitz to Commander-in-Chief of the U-boat arm. In the earliest days of the conflict, newsreel cameramen often caught an aspect of Dönitz's behaviour that endeared him to many of his men throughout the U-boat war, and which many of its survivors still comment upon to this day. Whatever his limitations, a lack of leadership charisma was not among them. Until he became Gross Admiral and based in Berlin, he always attempted to be present at the return and departure of one of his submarines, firstly in Germany and, after June 1940, in France. Awards were frequently presented on the spot, Dönitz being of the opinion that this contributed greatly to morale. He also made it a point to be present at every passing out parade. His practice of shaking the hands of each man, lingering a short while, and looking straight into his eyes is often commented upon by veterans. Their reference to Dönitz as the Lion or Uncle Carl is the measure of their high regard for him.